What I'm curious to know, and again, getting our bearings, how far away are we from where this started at the law enforcement center?
It's hard to say.
And it looks as if the truck is kind of acting as the focal point or the center for this line.
It is at this point, yeah. Then the officer who's on top of that truck is going to many times be the one shooting those pepper balls, or they could be rubber balls or bean bags. It could be various different things, but they've got actually more of it. Looks like there's another tactical truck coming in behind it too. If I'm looking correctly, there's another vehicle coming up behind it. So we could possibly see multiple arrests happen here very shortly. This is something that they utilize. Basically, the trucks go in, grab the line advances, they grab people, they utilize the spotlights like that, blind the people so they can't see what's coming, and then they swoop in, grab them, pull them, put them in the truck, and take them into custody. So we could definitely see a very, very big advance here very shortly from law enforcement.
Which way should we go?
Was that a bang?
Yeah, and it sounds like
the other way.
the police are telling the media to kind of to regroup, move positions too.
And that's one of the signs of they're going to start advancing rather rapidly. So it could get very, very interesting here very shortly. They're bringing in a van. Again, those vans are utilized to take people who are taken into custody. In a sense, a paddy wagon, right?
Yes, but I always try to avoid using that term because it has negative connotations towards Irish people.
Oh, yes, thank you.
That's where the history comes from. And of course, most people don't know that. It's all right. But yes, just a rather large van where they can throw in on half a dozen or more people after they've been arrested, handcuffed, and searched, and then they can put them in there and then take them to either the law enforcement center just down the street or perhaps the county jail.
Can we hear what she's saying?
Yeah, let's see.
Shot and killed a young man, 20 years old, Dante Wright, because they had stopped him for his license plate was expired. This is another firework. Don't be alarmed, it's just a firework. And people just could not believe that another black man had been killed by an officer, especially since there was a lot of tension here, and still is, because the trial of former Officer Derek Chauvin is going on for being accused of murdering George Floyd. And as that is going on, and as people are nervous about how that is going to end, this is happening. We are going to get out of the way. Folks are starting to run because police are starting to push further and further into the neighborhood. And I'm just going to come up here, but we're at a vantage point. You can hear things flying back and forth. You can hear people throwing things, but you can also hear the officers sort of using their less than lethal rounds towards the public here. You see water bottles being thrown, and you hear that back and forth. That is tear gas. Let's show a little bit. So you see that there. They're shooting tear gas at someone that has a shield. And you'll see that flare up, and boy, the tear gas that they're using, Dawn, and I know you've had
signals here. I mean, this is when it gets a little interesting with the signal, because you get a lot of people in one spot, and then also law enforcement have the ability to block cell signals, and a lot of times the technology that's used in these packs that they have are utilizing cell signals. So it is a possibility that law enforcement could be using that, because we've got about 3 different cameras that have all lost signal here in just the past minute. So there's a possibility that cell signals could be interrupted because of the current situation. So we're gonna bounce back and forth between different shots, hopefully as they come up. But it looks like law enforcement's going to be making some type of advance in that area here shortly. So if you're joining us, again, the protests are continuing here in the Brooklyn Center area, and which is near Minneapolis. And yes, we're getting those shots back up now. So officers are still on that line. I'm guessing, is that I've seen the fence there too. Is that where the law enforcement center is, right behind it?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so that gives us a perspective of where the law enforcement center is. And then you see there are people still hurtling things towards officers who are standing that line there in front of the law enforcement center.
Yeah, and this other shot here appears to be from way further back. It kind of and it's tilted toward the ground now, but appears to be more toward the back of the crowd. This is from WCCO. But yeah, it appears it's calmed a little bit, but again, we can't see the other side of the line. That feed went away, so as soon as we get that back, we'll update you. You can see the rain is still falling. Again, it's about 42 degrees. It's cold, very unpleasant, which usually has an effect on on tamping down the number of protesters because people don't want to be out in those conditions, but it really hasn't seemed to make too much of a difference as far as getting people to disperse. Police gave these protesters about an hour and a half after curfew before they started advancing. They gave 4 or 5 warnings saying that you will be arrested if you don't leave the area. So gave the crowd several options and told them what they were doing. And again, we're just watching some different shots from the scene here. We've seen several people arrested. We'll likely get an update at some point tomorrow on the number of people, maybe tonight on the number of people taken into custody. But certainly we've seen some arrests happen here.
Can we go back to the shot in the bottom right? There we go. That's the more clear shot, not as shaky at the moment. And we'll
hear another loudspeaker too.
Can we go ahead and take that? Can you bring that up full so we can hear what they're saying?
To me, that almost sounds like not the police. It sounds like maybe someone with a megaphone. It's hard to make out exactly what they were saying, but appears to have stopped at the moment. You hear a lot of horns.
There have been individuals over here on the side who have been throwing things at officers, so officers are advancing here, trying to see where that's coming from, because they're actually at a disadvantage. There's 2 vehicles blocking their line of sight. So that line, those few officers that came forward are just trying to get a better idea of where those individuals who are tossing things are, seeing where they're at. And yes, you're right. The loudspeakers, the megaphone sounds like it's coming from the protesters, not from the officers themselves.
Yeah.
Are there any shots?
These are the only 2 feeds we've got up right now.
We gotta go.
And we're trying to get more as we go. I mean, these packs also have batteries, and sometimes they have to switch them out too. And right now, it's a holding pattern. Officers are holding that line in front of the law enforcement center. They are telling people to disperse. They are telling people to go home. You've got apartments there too that people are just standing outside watching from. And that could be dangerous in itself too, because you never know how the tear gas could affect a home or one of those apartment buildings. But it looks like the protesters are actually moving. Some individuals have stuff in their hands. I don't know where that's from.
Yeah,
it's a microwave.
Wow. I just heard one of them say, look, we're moving positions.
So it looks like the protesters are moving positions, and you had that one line, and the protesters have moved over to the side of the apartment buildings over here, which is, I don't know if there's another line from law enforcement, but we'll see where they go. We've got another shot up here. I think we're on that other angle. Let's go to WCCO here, and I don't know if this is the...
Actually, it's about to switch here back to another. This is from the front line. It's like, or right behind the front line, maybe.
So the law enforcement agencies looks like they have several different lines at once. Oh, something just got. I was watching another feed here. I just saw more stuff being hurled at the officers. I haven't seen them utilize any tear gas lately. I don't know if they're holding off, but I have a feeling that there's going to be some type of movement here soon by law enforcement to disperse the protesters.
Yeah, I think we're getting an update from this reporter here too in just a moment. Maybe have a little more insight from what he's seeing from right there in the front of the line. You see that in that one officer in tactical gear right there holding that pepper gun or rubber bullets or whatever, that beanbag,
It's
whatever.
got that wider barrel, so it's more than likely rubber bullets or the beanbag gun.
Yeah, a couple of those, and those two have kind of been in the front watching for people who are either hurling things or just kind of being the lookouts.
It's a very tense situation with these protests for both sides, and honestly, I mean, the people who are protesting have a message they're wanting to deliver, where law enforcement's trying to disperse these crowds and get them to go home. Both sides have a goal in mind, and they conflict with each other, and that's going to happen. But right now, it's going to be who takes whatever tactical maneuver they're going to do. Law enforcement has the upper hand. They have the gear, they have the technology, they have the manpower, and the end goal for law enforcement is to get them to disperse peacefully, to go home and just end the day. Okay, we see some smoke rising here. Where's that from?
Yeah, and law enforcement also has a lot of knowledge just from what they've learned in the last couple of years about how to handle this exact situation. I mean, unfortunately, we've seen this situation play out.
Just trying to see, Don, if some officers are putting on their gas masks or if they're taking them off. I can't quite tell. Oh, sorry, we got caught up in some cables here. Sorry about that, Don. So what's happening is the state troopers here have been pushing people back, and they just keep every few minutes they push us further and further back, moving us further away from the police station. That's what's been happening. And then you can see there's some of these more heavily armed officers here, but also there's an officer here with this weapon, with this large, looks like a machine gun, but it's actually what they use to fire that tear gas. And we've been seeing him use that. They've been pointing it at people here in the alleyway here behind some of these buildings. And so that's basically what's happening now. There's a standoff. Some of the people some of them are still remaining here. They have no intention on leaving. So what's happening at some point, the police push them further back. But it's been relatively calm, I would say, the last few minutes. Since 9 o'clock Eastern time, there has been a steady stream and a barrage of tear gas and pepper balls and some of those flashbangs. We have not seen any of that in the last several minutes. So it would seem, at least for now, police are just kind of going to allow the crowd to remain. We'll see how long it lasts. It has not lasted for very long. And you can see through the crowd here, Don, many of the people are still remaining with their chanting and have their hands up, waiting to see what the next move will be from the police. But as you said, this has been a really tough time for this community, and certainly in what's to come in the days and week as we await the jury to reach their decision in the Chauvin trial. Certainly this is on the minds of many of the police leaders here, as you said, about sort of is now in charge of this. You always get the sense here, Don, that they want to set some kind of precedent here. They want to send some kind of signal here that in the days to come and then the weeks to come, that they are not going to allow people to just freely and do what they want as they get past the curfew. Because from what I can see, certainly they've been throwing water bottles at the police, but at some point the police just decided after several water bottles had been thrown around 9 o'clock or so that they had enough. And that is when you started seeing the tear gas and the flashbangs and the pepper balls. And the police during that time were not even in a confrontation with many of the protesters, because the police were standing behind the fence, and many of the protesters were standing at the fence, and they were yelling at the police. Water bottles were being thrown. And then at some point, the police had just decided that they had had enough, and then we started seeing them move in. And then now you see this large presence here.
All right, so you see the one shot frozen again.
Yeah, Don.
All right, it's back.
I can hear you, Don.
And we're just kind of go ahead, Sean.
No, I was just going to say at this point, what we're going to do is, as you said, watch this group. It looks like protesters are getting a little bit closer to that line of officers there from the KRE shot. And that's when things get a little bit more tense. You got the protesters who potentially have projectiles. They could throw stuff at officers. That's when officers start basically utilizing tear gas again and utilizing flashbangs and pepper bullets and several different items. When I was in a protest, there was one individual who got way close to the officers, and the person perched on top of that truck utilized several pepper. Oh, hold on, we got something going on here. Looks like officers just rushed forward. They are now moving forward. They are moving forward even faster than before. We're going to see some of that video break up there, but officers are moving forward in that one shot. Let's go back up to the double box here, see if the officers on the other angle are doing the same thing. You see the protesters, they've stopped. They've got on their knees. They've put their hands up. It's very difficult to, we can't really see everything at this moment because, again, the cameraman's moving. We're losing our signal on the other one because, again, all the activity in the cell towers are probably being overloaded at this point. But those officers move forward, and they're going to inch forward as they continue to move on with these, trying to disperse these crowds. They're going to move forward. They're going to take somebody into custody. They're going to pull them back, and they're going to keep that portion of the line. And I'm not seeing with those individuals with their hands up. We got more over here on this side. They've got their hands up too, but they're not on their knees. They're just standing there with their hands up and chanting.
You know, the police just kind of taking very kind of like baby steps. They'll move a few feet and then stop, and then it seems like they're just kind of incrementally, slowly moving up.
Well, the tactic is this isn't a sprint; it's a marathon.
Sure.
It can take hours to disperse a crowd like this.
And again, we'll go right back to them. But Minnesota tweeting 12 minutes ago, law enforcement continuing to make arrests. Curfew violation is a misdemeanor. Please go home. The mayor of Brooklyn Center said 15 minutes ago, we want to ensure everyone gets home safely tonight. Peaceful protesting is your right, but I'm asking everyone to please go home. So that's what we're watching here as officials pleading with folks to go home, leave in peace. But these protesters, many of them don't seem like they're going anywhere at this point, even though they've seen some of their folks here alongside them get arrested. We've seen a few folks, probably at least from our vantage points, we've seen maybe a dozen or so people get arrested, but it hasn't been any sort of mass arrests at this point. But of course, as the night wears on, as this kind of drags on longer, police usually kind of start being a bit more aggressive to clear crowds. You see them advancing again.
Watch your step.
It was implemented, or went into effect rather, hours ago.
Yeah, it's been about 2.5 hours at this point. 7 p.m. Central is when the curfew went into effect. We're now at 9:30.
And we can see the line, shoulder to shoulder, police officers marching toward the protesters, equipped with, looks like shields and batons.
You saw another group of officers rush forward there and pull a couple more there. Okay, now tear gas is being used. This is again why they surround
Pepper
the
spray.
people that they're taking into custody. So those other protesters can come in and attack the officers while they're taking that person into custody. And you can see they used pepper spray, that orange spray, on the other protesters who were trying to come in and pull that protester back that was being taken into custody.
See a number of objects being thrown as well.
We're going to lose signal again. It's just the signal's not so great right now coming from those, as we call them, backpacks. Officers are moving. Okay, so this gives you an idea. A minute ago, those officers were all the way back to that apartment building, the corner of that apartment building. They have moved several yards forward now, and that's going to continue as they progress, and they're still moving forward.
Is there audio from this scene that we could kind of listen in for a moment?
Yeah, that's what we're listening to. It's really not much at the moment. When the reporter speaks, I kind of turn it up a little bit, but
Okay.
it's just general crowd noise, some coughing here and there.
There will be. This is when you see that spray carry for quite a bit of distance.
Yards.
Yeah, yards, literally yards.
Yes.
And so when you hear them coughing, it's because they have been ingesting, the person who's the photographer or anybody around them has been ingesting that spray. If you've ever been around the pepper spray being released, same thing. It just can take people down, several people down in one little area.
And I have never been hit by a pepper spray or anything like that. But from what I understand, even the slightest whiff can really send you reeling.
You know, when I was covering a protest down in Topeka a while back, I mean, they had shot the big canisters into the middle of the street, and I was almost a block down. And even as the wind brought it my way, just a little bit of a whiff, and I had a mask on too, because there was still the pandemic that was going on. Just a little of it got in my nose, it went down my sinuses, it went down my throat. I mean, every aspect of it, of breathing was so difficult. I just stopped, and I just had to stop.